You can sustain life if you have 7 houses together. You could be surrounded by dirt, but if those 7 families have each other, they're going to feel like there's life, you know? And I think that has just taken over my mind, just like nonstop. I just keep going because you know what I love about it too? The bigger the vision, the less I can do it on my own. 7 houses, I can rip that out, right? My company, I mean, it's like 7 houses and I have my company AZBuilt, right? Mm-hmm. Well, I can do that. But the goal and the vision for me would be like we're, you know, like you're saying, 7 houses at a time, because I can partner with other builders. Like I can come alongside and bring in everybody in Los Angeles, all these other great builders that want to do beautiful buildings for people that last. You know, biggest problem with some of these places, like they leak, and then people get this house that they think is nice. We've all seen it in this like production. Then the windows are cheap, the cheap windows leak, and then it becomes a big mess. And I get it, it's all because it's down to budget. But I want to think outside, like creatively, and I want to develop systems that are just kind of a marriage between custom and production. Like what happens when they come together, you know? And see what we can do. I want to think bigger than that. Like we're just going to pepper it with just a bunch of, production homes or whatever. And I know I can't do it all, but I can do something.
Well, friends, welcome to At the Table. My name is Drew Sams. I'm the senior pastor here at Bel Air Church. This podcast seeks to go deep in the lives of our guests. You know, in Scripture, it seems like Jesus is most frequently around a table. He's either going to, at, or having just left a meal. And we want to take some time to get to know some people, to see how their faith intersects with their work in the world. And today, we've got a very good friend of mine, Anthony Zimmitti. He is not only a father and a husband, he is a drummer. He's a long-term builder here in Los Angeles, has built some premier properties. But in this season, he is entering into a new journey, a new chapter in his life as he's starting a nonprofit called 7 Houses. I can't wait for you to get to know him, to hear more about his journey, but also to understand that perseverance and endurance is something that is applicable not just in sports, but in life. And there's so much you're going to take away from this one on At the Table. All right, here we go, diving right in. A good friend of mine, Anthony Zimmitti. You know, you wear a lot of hats. You are a dad, you're a husband, you're a builder, you're a drummer, you're starting a nonprofit. So many things we're going to cover today, but first I have to apologize to you publicly.
How many times?
How many? Well,
I can think of a couple.
You can think of a whole bunch. But for today, you sent me a text early in the morning. You were going to an area, Griffith Park in Los Angeles. You were going to go on a trail run. You don't usually run in that area, and you asked me for a route. Yeah. And I hammered one out pretty quickly while driving in Los Angeles traffic. Should not have done that. It's a terrible habit I had. And I find out that instead of sending you a 6-mile route on the trail, it was on the road.
It was. So my first experience, I've born and raised in LA. Run all throughout the Santa Monicas, run all throughout Angeles, the Verdugos, right? Never have I stepped 1 foot on a trail in Griffith Park.
Historic part of the city.
Yeah, it's
right?
Like it's surrounded. It's
Griffith
the observatory.
Park Observatory.
I've driven the roads.
Hollywood sign is up there.
Yep. I did the whole thing. Today was my first trail run.
And there's trail marathons.
Yeah.
There's would you say like a spaghetti?
Yeah, it was like spaghetti trails. They're everywhere. It was like this big bowl of trail. And I didn't even get one bite.
Because of me. I send you the wrong route on the road.
I accept your apology.
I'm sincerely sorry.
So I still haven't done a trail run yet in Griffith Park.
So maybe we need to join one together.
Yeah, we should do
what's
that.
Interesting, we're going to get into all this, and this is kind of a fun environment to talk to you in. Sure. I've probably spent more time having conversations with you, either on the trail, on text threads, or maybe even over meals than any other context. Yeah. But you're actually the reason why I do distance running and ultra running. And so tell me, what's the definition of an ultra?
I would say it's anything past 50 kilometers. Arguably, I mean, a marathon is ultra enough for some people. I mean, really, that's quite a challenge alone. But I would say pretty much from the 50-mile mark and up is where you definitely live a lot of different lives, like in one day. Like you experience so many different things. Like in a 50K or a marathon, like you just know you're going to suffer, but you're going to get through it. When you start getting into 50-mile, it's more of a question of, am I going to make it, right? And so now it's just like, and then the deeper you go, which I've topped out at 100 miles, which is good enough for me at this point. But yeah, I mean, I think, so in answer to your question, it's anything over 50K,
So anything over 50K.
Yeah. That's what everybody says.
That's what everybody says,
I mean,
right?
I should just go with it. Yeah, I don't want to create my own rules here.
Yeah. So, we're going to go into a whole bunch of topics. I want to hear about your childhood, growing up in Los Angeles, the many chapters of your life. But why don't we enter into it through running, through endurance? Maybe that's the doorway we'll go into.
Great.
But how did you get into the distance running? For some people, they can't afford therapy, so they do that.
Right.
For others, they're trying to escape things.
Yeah.
Like, what's the real reason why Anthony Zimmitti started running?
Well, if I can just do a quick little backup. When I was in my early 20s, I was with Gina, my wife, and I would be on the porch smoking a cigarette, and she would get in her car and be like, "Bye, honey, I'm going for she was going to go to a workout class." Like it was when there was the big workout phase, and then they would recover at the yogurt place, like get like a frozen yogurt, right? It was like this whole thing of like,
you earn the scoops.
Yeah. That's what they did. It was like a meal, like a frozen yogurt. And so she would just continue to do that, and I'd be on the porch just smoking a cigarette, and I was like, started to feel pretty bad about myself. I was like, man, you know what? I got to do something. Anyways, I had an old 72 Plymouth Valiant, baby blue, white top. It was insane. It was beautiful. I loved it. And it broke down at the end of the street. And when it broke down, I had to push it back to my house. Well, I pushed it back down, and I popped my Achilles tendon pushing my car. Like, that's what a mess I was. And so I got it there, spent the next 6 weeks in a boot, smoking on the porch with the boot on while my wife takes off. I think she's my girlfriend at the point. I'm not sure. I lose track of the
early
dates.
chapters of the relationship.
Yeah. It was the beginning. It was the intro years. And one day, I got the boot off. I recovered, and I said, I've got to do something, right? Like I've just got to do something. So I ended up finding this boxing place, and I got into boxing and boxed for maybe a year or two or whatever. And as I was boxing one day, I was like, I have this crappy little bike, mountain bike, like this whole, I'm just going to ride it up to the boxing rink and then, box, come back. And so I did that. And then one day I was like, I think I'm just going to keep riding, have my backpack on, my gloves, but I think I'm just going to keep riding. And remember, I hit Ventura, and I went right on Ventura because I came up Balboa. I was in Lake Balboa, It was Van Nuys then, but it became Lake Balboa. And I was just hung her right, and I was like, man, this is amazing, And I started playing around there, and then one day I remember I found Havenhurst, and I was like, I'm going to go. And I made like halfway,
It's steep.
Super steep, but I can only make it to the bottom of the steep, right? And then sure enough, I just kept coming back at it, gloves in the back, never used them. And that was the moment I kind of just like turned away from boxing and just got into cycling. And so got into this cycling thing, started mountain biking, and a dear friend of mine, Chip, in Northern California, I was starting to get pretty into mountain biking there, and he invited me up to a men's mountain biking trip up in Grass Valley, which is like by Tahoe area, and it's called Downeyville. And so he invited me on a men's trip, and I was like, I'm going to go hang with the boys. We're going to ride. And so just spent this whole weekend up in this most beautiful country, massive mountains, big vertical, tons of climbing. Like every day was like 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 feet of climbing. And every single climb, they waited for me. I was the last guy. And they were awesome. They were like, good job, Anthony, good job. And I'm like, good job. And I remember it was the last day, the trip was over. We were leaving the next morning. And I think it was a payphone. I feel like I was in a payphone because it was like a weird spot. And I called Gina, and she's like, how was your trip? Like, oh my gosh, how was it? I'm like, it's amazing. I'm at the pizza place right now with the guys. It was amazing. And she's like, how'd you do? I'm like, I did I did pretty good. I hung in there. I said, they were waiting for me. I said, but you know what? I will never be last again. From this point on today, like, I'm going to put in the work. I'm going to put in the time. I'm going to grow as an athlete, right? And I'm just an amateur athlete. It was no professional, anything. But that was kind of my leap into, I'm gonna do this. Like, because like you said, therapy, right? Like people pay for therapy. Like when I was a kid, my parents put me in group therapy, and we were a bunch of wild kids. But this became like my peace. This became like something that made me like process and think and clearly, And so kind of like boxing. So then I got way into riding. I rode for years. Ended up doing I didn't really get into road racing. I did a lot of road riding to train for mountain biking. Like I did mostly like sport class kind of riding, but then I got into like sort of ultra events, like 24 hours of adrenaline. There was this whole mountain bike series back in the day, like small teams, and you would just ride, like race like 70 miles or something like that. Got into that. And that's when I experienced like endurance racing. And then like boxing, I was like, I found something else. I transitioned into like a bit of adventure racing because now I started picking up on all these sort of like, other sports. I was like, oh, there's running and there's trekking and like, what's this kayaking thing? Like, well, I guess I can train for kayaking in Lake Balboa, but it just kind of went from one thing to the next into adventure racing, which kind of pushed me into running because there was a group of guys that when my kids were in track and cross country, was a group of dads that were runners. And so I left out one thing before the running. I had like a stint of swimming. Like I swam, in the pool at Calabasas Swim and Tennis Center. Then I was like, well, I got to go big. I started doing like competitive, like masters swimming. And then I realized one day, like after probably 2 years of like swimming 4 to 5 days a week, I got out of the pool, I popped off my glasses, and I looked at the line down the middle of the pool, and I was like, I'm never doing this again. I can't do this. This is so boring. And I've never been in the pool since then.
How many years ago was that, you think? 15 years, 10 years?
It was probably like, I was a musician at the time. It's back in my music days. It was probably like 12, 13, 14 years ago, something like that. And at that time, that's when I met these other dads that were running. So while our kids were doing cross-country practice at Pierce, they would go run. And then they just kind of brought me in, and I just cranked it up from there.
So from smoking on the porch with the boot, from a popped Achilles, pushing the car down, fast forward, I'll pick one highlight out of the reel here.
Okay.
You do the Hope Heals 100.
Yeah.
And it was a 100-mile run raising money for an organization called Hope Heals.
Yeah.
And if my memory is right, the route for that had to get adjusted.
Oh, yeah.
So first, why don't we back up a moment and talk about Hope Heals, your intersection with Jay and Catherine Wolf, why you would even get out and run 100 miles raising money, and then what'd you learn that day? More than a day, because it was more than 24 hours, when you had to adjust the route on the fly because of the inclement weather.
Well, I met them before for the Backbone. Because remember, I did Backbone first.
That's right.
With them.
So the Backbone Trail, technically it doesn't exist right now because of the Palisades fire.
Right.
But it's a recent trail, 68, 71 miles, depending on if you get lost or not.
If you go through the water.
We'll get to that in a bit. But 68 miles point to point from Will Rogers State Park in the Palisades. It traverses the entirety of the Santa Monica Range, ends up at the Ray Miller Trail up near Point Magoo. That's right, you ran that entire thing raising money.
Solo. Yeah.
So first back up, how'd you meet Jay and Catherine Wolf? What's their intersection? Not everybody knows their story, let alone how you met them.
So Jay and Catherine Wolf they attended Bel Air, and I didn't know them at this time, but she had a stroke. I can't tell you exactly the type of stroke that she had, but she was friends with a lot of our friends. And she had this sort of life-altering stroke that didn't take her life, but it took her mobility, right? So I wouldn't say Catherine's like fully in a wheelchair. She gets up, she walks around and stuff like that, but she has severe mobility, challenges, if you will.
And this happened, this medical traumatic incident that almost cost her life happened in her 20s. Young mom, hadn't been married that long.
Right.
Was a model trying to work in that industry, and just in an instant, her whole life changes.
And so I knew them through different. I knew of them. I didn't even really know them, but I knew of them and their story through friends, mutual friends. And I remember our friend John Bach was having a party. He was having it was a thing for Bala, I think. The pastor guy.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And the Bachs had a function, and I remember having Backbone in my mind.
As a runner,
SoCal, it's a classic
Legend.
Route.
Yeah.
I had this vision in my mind of wanting to do it. So fast forward me going to this party, and I end up meeting Jay and Catherine. And while I meet them, it was the first time I was talking to Jay, and he was a great guy, and we're sitting there chatting, and then in my mind, I just like, boom, you need to run Backbone Trail, and whatever money you can raise, it's for Hope Heals. And I was like, okay. So I literally walked up to him and said, hey man, I have this idea. Like, I've been wanting to run this Backbone Trail. I want to do it in July, which is really soon. It's only like 6 to 7 weeks away. And I want to run it for you guys. I want to run it so we can raise money for Hope Heals. I want to run it so we can draw attention to what you guys are doing. I said, that's my small piece. I don't know what it'll do or what it'll bring, but does that sound like something you'd want to do? And he was really caught off guard, like, well, what does this even mean? Like, oh, okay. And then, so we decided to just talk about it. And so we talked maybe the next day or like on a Monday. And I just gave him my pitch, and I said, man, I really want to run this trail. I want to run it for you guys. And let's just see what happens. And ended up, I forget the number, but I want to say like, it might've been like 70 grand or 50 or 70 grand the first time or something. Like it was pretty significant. Like, oh wow, that was worth it, having this dude run a trail, And it really, that was like my first, doing something like that. It was solo. I saw you for a little section. I saw a couple friends here and there. But I did it mostly planned alone. Like, I even took Uber from my house.
That's right. I remember you telling the story about the Uber driver thinking you were crazy. What time did you start?
I woke up at midnight, and I had some coffee and had some breakfast at midnight like everybody does. And he picked me up at 1 a.m, and he Ubered me from Lake Balboa. Or no, I think I might have been in Woodland Hills. Anyways, he Ubered me from the valley to the start, Will Rogers State Park, and it was like dead quiet. It was the middle of the night. It was about 1:40 or 1:30 by the time we got there.
And the park's closed. There's gates, so you can't go all the way to the trailhead.
No,
you got to park on the outside.
Done. And I remember I just sat there on the ground, because he was, what's this guy getting in my car for? Like, what's this pack he has on with bottles and stuff? And what is all this? And I have a cup of coffee in my hand, like something I can throw away.
Typical pickup in the middle of the night, right?
Yeah, he's just like, what's going to happen here? Probably thinking he was bringing somebody home from somewhere. And I just headed out. I wait till my watch went 2 a.m. and just beep, and I just headed out on one of the best journeys of my distance running times. I spent probably the first 5, because I think it was like out past Topanga. Like I was out for hours and the sun was rising, and that's when I saw John and I think Dave first. And I saw them. It was my first sign of life. And I was so like emotional because of the whole thing that I saw them, and I started bawling. And they're like, bro, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm just happy to see my friends. Like, this is so amazing. You guys surprised me, because I didn't know anybody would be there.
And was this the furthest you would run at this point?
This would definitely be the furthest I've ever run.
So it's 68, 70 miles, but it's not flat. This is not running around a track.
Super hilly, yeah. I think it's, what is it, like 13 or 15,000, something like that. Yeah, and I ended up doing it, and it was great.
Raising a huge amount of money.
Yep.
Because they had started a nonprofit at this point called Hope Heals.
Right.
But I want to go back to that moment. So you're at this gathering at the Bach home, and this kind of stroke of inspiration hits you to do something for them. Had that ever happened to you at that point? something like that, just kind of an instant idea. Some people, ideas come to them and they brush it aside like that's crazy.
Yeah.
Was that a common experience up until that moment? I know that there's been many other experiences, and we'll get to some of those in a bit, but where did that come from? I mean, how do you even categorize that? Was that a normal experience for you?
Was
Flash of an idea?
No, it was very abnormal because, I mean, maybe I had some opportunities like that before because as I mature, I realized there was probably other things that maybe I just didn't react to. I was like, oh, I'm just going to brush it aside. Like, no, I don't want to take a chance. I don't want to say something, or I don't want to do. And I think that's appropriate for certain things, depending upon what you're going to say or what you're trying to do, right? Like,
yeah, the ready, fire, aim is not a good approach all the time, right?
Right. So it was discerning in a way of saying, okay, what is this? And what's the why? And then how would it bless these people? Like what would be and then I go, okay, I'm just going to do it. Because I'm not going to let fear stop me from doing it. Because that would be the first thing that's saying, but what if it doesn't work out? What if I make a mess of it, And so that was like my first time where I was just like, yeah, we're doing this. And if I just say it now, I'm in, and I think that's just important for me. Like if I just say yes, I am in 100%. I have to be, because now I can't get out of it. But if I say, I'll pray about it, or I'll think about it, or I'll do this and I'll do that, I'll probably go home and be like, that's kind of a dumb idea. I'm not going to do that. So
easy to talk yourself out of those things.
Easy, because the life is busy.
So would you describe it looking back as God kind of inspired you to do that, or was it totally an Anthony thing? You talked about maturity. What kind of maturity are we talking about? Are we talking about emotional maturity, spiritual maturity, just life experience maturity, all the above?
Yeah, it's probably a little bit of all of it. Yeah. Having passed on opportunities to either bless somebody or to do something that I didn't do that I kind of thought about later, well, why didn't I do that? And you were just worried about what people would think.
And were there people in your life at the time that you saw do that well? I think about the box and I think about the two of them. They seem like the type of people that jump on things.
Oh yeah. I mean,
and that generosity inspires generosity.
Yeah. I mean, John and Kelly have always been people John has essentially big brother, big brothers fosters a kid, you know what I mean? It's just, they're always like that. John and Kelly do the Target thing for Christmas. They bring families there and they just bless people.
What does he do? So doesn't he post on Craigslist?
Craigslist Christmas. That's it. Yeah.
This is wild. Yep. So John and Kelly Bach, we've known them for many, many years. They post on Craigslist. Essentially, do you need help with Christmas this year? Something like that. I can't remember the exact post, but he ends up meeting people who reach out via Craigslist, and he pairs them up with people who he knows in his life who want to be generous, and they go and they shop together at Target. So it's not transactional, it's highly relational, making it possible for people to provide a Christmas for family, for kids, for nieces, for nephews, for grandkids. He's been doing that for years.
I mean, in fact, because I've been to many of them, and when the people, when they come, because if you're part of John's team to serve the people, right? You're just kind of waiting. You get there a little bit early, you're waiting for people to come. And when they come, they're kind of okay, is this a joke? Or because people will think it's a joke. Wait, this doesn't happen.
Especially the Craigslist.
Why would somebody really want to do this? So they're kind of expecting to be let down, And then all of a sudden there's a bunch of people that are just yeah, we're here. We just want to bless you. Let's just do this. We want you guys to have a great Christmas. And
I think one of my first memories of you is actually at that Target on Sepulveda Boulevard. I had seen you, been around you. Yeah. I became the senior pastor at Bel Air in 2014. Can't remember. What was your first year?
Was it 2014?
Yeah, it was the first year you came to Bel Air.
It's hard for me because it's I think you just started, but it's a little gray for me because my kids went to Bel Air Press to preschool.
Yeah.
And then we had this other season at Reality. And then we just came back to Bel Air. And I feel like it was right when you started this. Yeah.
And so one of those early memories, I don't know if it was 15 or 16 when the box did that Craigslist Christmas. I remember being one of the families that showed up to come alongside people, and you were one of those families that came.
I remember hanging,
And I remember knowing about you, and there was so many people involved in young marrieds and growing families, very vibrant ministry at Bel Air, led by volunteers.
Yeah.
And I don't know, at some point we connected through another staff member, R.O. Smith, who was running, and the dude was just running laps around Lake Balboa. Yeah. And I think I have this memory of saying, like, there's a lot of awesome trails 5 minutes away. And we started running together. And this brings me back to, you were the one that got me into distance trail running. I grew up playing soccer. So it was always running for either punishment, take a lap,
Yeah.
It's the thing we never wanted to do. Yeah. But then it was this beautiful exploration of the wilderness and creation and, getting off the road, getting out in nature. Yeah. So beautiful. And we've done collectively many, many adventures together.
Yep.
One of those was a double cross in the Grand Canyon, right in the height of the pandemic in 2020. We were scheduled to do it, I think, in like that spring, had to push it to the fall.
Right.
Technically, it was still closed. We got in, started at 3 a.m., group of friends. There were 7 of us total, my brother-in-law. Entered into the canyon from the south side in the dark. It was so cold, the 30s.
Yep.
I saw the video on my phone where you prayed for us before we entered in.
Right.
Went across and then up. North side, there was some gnarly wheels coming off the wagon for some of us.
Yeah.
Turned around, came back.
Yeah, poles flying.
And coming back through, even though it was in the lower 30s up on the rim, I mean, it was like in the upper 90s by the time we were crossing through the box. It's this narrow, hot part, right?
Didn't you run out of water or something?
Ran out of water. And so we're coming up, and I want to go to this one moment because I had no idea how dangerous it got in the moment. I ran out of water. I was hallucinating. We had been kind of messing around up to that point. As you know me, I'm taking way too many photos.
You have memories. I don't.
Yeah.
It's all in my head.
But if I could say this way, we took it lightly, maybe too lightly. And there was a moment where you kind of were the dad in the group.
You mean the backcountry part?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And and you took charge where you needed to take charge. Can we go back to that moment?
Yeah. So, I think it was like kind of from the north side back.
Yeah.
It was relaxed. We were having a good time. There was a couple physical, emotional breakdowns from people, and everybody's getting exhausted. So, who you are is being revealed a bit. We
were getting separated as a group.
Right. And, that's actually when Grutter was like telling me, oh my gosh, we're having a baby. And I was like, what? And I think they have 3 or 4 more babies since then. But
you chosen the craziest part of the day to drop that news, huh?
Yeah, exactly. So, but when we were climbing back out, there's like a 10-mile out, and it's like everybody's getting exhausted. There's a lot of work to do. And then I could just sort of see in the moment of like, and part of it, like, I felt a little bad for, because I tend to take things like I try to be relaxed, and I'm not competitive against anybody but myself, but I tend to like take things like probably a little bit too seriously. And there was that moment where I was like trying to pump water out of the ground. Remember that little sludgy pile of whatever water? I was just trying to get you water. And then
one of the reasons why I ran out of water is because the National Park Service shut down the water spigots.
Right.
It was a Friday, 95 degrees, but on Monday, a forecasted storm was going to come. And so because they don't work on the weekends, they were shutting it all down because they didn't want the pipes to freeze that next Monday. So we discovered this as we're coming back through.
Right.
But the good news is we have these water bottles with filters on them.
Yeah.
So all you got to do is scoop up any semblance of water. And I've got a photo on my phone,
liquid.
And it does not look like anything remotely safe to drink.
Bad. Yeah.
And you kind of took over in that moment.
I had one of those like, snap out of it. We're in the backcountry right now. Nobody is going to get you out of here. You must get yourself out of here. I need you to drink this right now. I need you to, I had one of those.
Full dad mode.
I had full on like, yo, I need you to, I need you to
shake
look
us
at me.
out of our stupor.
Yeah. Did I? Yeah, I did. This is backcountry. Yeah, there was a little moment in there. But I think it's like nature is interesting. Like you want to have a good time, you want to enjoy yourself out there, but there's such a high level of respect because it can just change your life in a way that that there's no turning back. You know what I mean?
You can see how accidents can happen.
Yeah, accidents
in the ocean,
people die, like
country.
And that might be a little dramatic. Like, I think even in that moment, if you were like dehydrated, we could have got rescue.
Sure.
They would have dragged you out, whatever. And you were able to snap out of it. I think it was just like a moment of like, hey, we need to deal with this real quick. And you could see, remember when we were getting closer to the top later, all those people were out there with no flashlights, nothing. Like they were on a just fun little hike down the rim.
Laying on the side of the trail.
Yeah, rocked with nothing but an iPhone.
Yeah.
Like light.
That's why there's signs all over the rims that say, don't go more than a quarter mile.
Right. Yeah. Don't go.
Which is crazy when you think about a quarter mile, it's a few blocks.
Right.
But the vertical ascent and descent is too much for people.
Yeah, 3 miles down is pretty easy.
Yeah.
It's just when you turn around.
Yeah.
And you decided to do it at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
When it can be, I mean, the thing is it's not really that remote. So, I mean, unless you had some sort of like a heat exhaustion, like illness thing or something like that. But other than that, you're just like somebody's going to get you on a donkey or something, just pull you out of there. It's pretty populated, but nonetheless, you still do need to get out.
So we've had these experiences, and you're still racing, you're still training, but you had a bit of a health detour in the last season. How do you, as somebody, so you talked about, cigarette on the porch, but then transitioning into boxing, you go into mountain biking, your short stint as a swimmer, running, that can become part of your sense of peace.
Right.
That can become your identity.
Yeah, for sure.
What happens when, I think about this so often, even for me, because so much of the joy of my life is getting up early and spending time with God out in the wilderness.
Right.
I'm not always going to have that. And so I have to be careful not to make the thing that I connect with God my God.
Right.
And the thing that reminds me of my identity, or the thing that points me to my peace, replace that as my peace. And so how have you, just on an emotional, spiritual, mental journey, how have you navigated this how many months has it been since you've had to dial back some of your running, right?
Right. So it's actually like an accumulation of years of burning the candle, physically. Really physically, like spiritually, I've gone in like seasons of like drought, where I'm almost like, I'm too busy for God, like I'm just like production mode. But for the most part, it's been like a physical, like I travel a lot. I run a lot. I train a lot. I'm not great at taking care of myself in a lot of other ways. Like I sleep good. I could recover better. I could eat better. Like I eat healthy, but a lot of times I don't eat enough or, whatever. So really I was just over the past kind of couple years, I've just been kind of like in and out of like not feeling great. And I had knee surgery because I tore a bunch of the meniscus in my knee. So then that kind of messed me up. And until last year when I went to crew my friend for Wasatch 100, he came to our place in Utah. And I was training again. I was starting to feel good. And then it was like I got to the cabin. It was like the lights turned off. Like I went for a run the next morning before he was getting there, just a quick shakeout, just after I got back from LA to Utah. And it was like I couldn't even run a few miles. Like my body just shut off. Like I would run and then I would have to stop and I'd start walking. And I was like, oh man, it's the altitude? No, we have a place here. Like I'm good. Everything's fine. And before I knew it, my friends got there, and then that night came around, and we had pasta dinner, and then I went to bed, and the next morning he had to get up because we were going to take him to the start on that Friday morning of September. They're there for September morning. And I woke up in the middle of the night like sweating and felt like I was having a heart attack. And the smart thing to do would have been to deal with it right then and there. But as I was passing out, coming from like my bathroom, like sweating, I'm like, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm going to be fine. I'm like sweating. I'm like, let me just lay on my bed for a second. All right. Let me just lay down to recover, which could have been lay down to die. I just wasn't making the right decisions. And sure enough, I came out of it and kind of laid down for a little bit longer, but then I had to get up. And so when I got up, I was like, okay, something's wrong, but I don't want to mess up his race. So I'm just going to keep my mouth shut.
Because you were there not only to crew,
to pace,
but also to pace. So
right.
Walk us through, what does it mean to pace somebody in a 100-mile race in the mountains,
right.
backcountry of Utah?
Right. So when you pace somebody like in a 100-mile race, usually from mile 50 to the end, you can have pacers broken up into two groups, right? So typically 2 different runners, 2 different times, 25 miles or so each, right? And I was supposed to do, I think I was going to do the middle section with him, because that's kind of the section where
critical role.
Yeah, it's kind of like, hey, I need you to stay focused. I know you're getting tired. I'm gonna hold you, but I'm also gonna slap you too. I'm gonna keep you honest, but because when you get to 75, I want your mind to be right and thinking about finishing, because then you can see it. Even though it's 25 miles away, you're like, I'm through it. It's those middle times. We get up. I don't say a word. I'm feeling horrible. This other guy, Vasily, is there, who's an amazing runner. We drop Armin off at the start line, get back in the car. We pull up to the cabin, and we're about to get out of the car. I say, oh, Vasily, I'm going to go to the hospital.
So you don't tell who you're going to pace, but you tell the other pacer,
right,
the other member of the team, because you didn't want to mess up his headspace,
I didn't want him to like lose focus, like, because I knew I would like figure this out. But I said, let me just get him there. And then we pull up to the cabin. I tell Vasily, hey, I need you to go help Armin, do whatever you're going to do. Because we had several hours till we were going to see him. So we went back to my cabin. And I said, I'm going to go to the hospital. And he's like, what do you mean? And then I just kind of told him briefly. And he actually at first wouldn't let me go by myself. And then I said, dude, I'm fine. Just let me go. I called Gina and kind of lost it a little bit with Gina. And she prays for me. And I get to the hospital, and they essentially let me in within like 2 minutes, because I'm a 52-year-old man, right, having these heart problems and all this kind of stuff, and just spent the next 5 hours there, and they got me straight and no real problems, right? They thought maybe pericarditis, a couple of weird things like that, and so for the next X amount of months, I just kept having those episodes, had to go to the hospital again. I was just not convinced that I wasn't going to die, right? Like, it was being so dramatic, but something was wrong, because my body is usually right on. It's like high performing in that regard. Like, I can push through things or just train for things and feel good. And it wasn't until I went to Tennessee for Christmas, and I got back on the 17th or the 18th of December. And Gina's like, dude, you need to rest. She could tell something was wrong with me. And I basically spent that first day just sleeping kind of on and off all day. I took naps. I don't ever do that. I stayed in my socks all day. I didn't even leave the house. And at that moment, like, God was like, you need to really rethink your life, dude. You need to pull it together. And so I spent that time until the end of the month, and going into the new year, like, with a rest mindset, a mindset of recovery, a mindset of caring for myself, and not just consistently pounding myself with work. Like I can take on a lot of things. Like, even with work, I can do a lot of things. I can work out hard. Like, if you give me the workout, I'll do it. Like, I have a coach, Tyler Green. He gives me the workout. I do the workout, and he constantly is telling me, hey, if something's wrong, I want you to just not do that. And I'm maturing through that, knowing and stuff. So I really had this season of rest to the end of the year, which actually set me up for a great 2025. Like, I'm back to like 35 to 40 miles a week, strength training. My body's back together. Like, I'm starting to feel very athletic, and just actually starting to feel healthy. It turned out it was probably more of a long COVID style thing. And I think it was just, yes, maybe long COVID, but also just Anthony not taking care of his body.
Just being full on. But in those months, was there a bit of a disorienting sense of self, because you're so used to putting in the miles, you're so used to maxing every area?
Yeah, it was just couldn't really do anything. I was like, I guess I'm going to walk. I'm going to walk in neighborhoods. I was pretty bummed, to be honest, because that was, that's
And
where
how do you process that? What do you, at this point in your life and looking back to last fall, when you get bummed, when you have those senses of in an ongoing, this is not where I want to be, how do you process that? Do you get distracted? Do you go to God? Do you stuff it? Do you lash out at other people?
Oh, man. Let me call my wife real quick. Hey, Gina,
Gina, what's the right answer to
Gina,
this, right?
help me, because I don't know myself. I'd like to say, like, I go to God, but I think a lot of times, like, I try to work it out myself.
Because you've been good at it.
Yeah, I've been great at it. And it wasn't really until, like, after January 7th, after the fires where, I really discovered that. So, like, physically, I was getting my body back together. And then spiritually in 2025, like, I was getting my spiritual life together.
So we'll get to January 7th, 2025 in a moment.
Yeah.
But you've mentioned Gina a few times.
My wife.
How many years you've been married now?
26.
Two amazing.
26. Yeah,
two
we've been
amazing
together
kids.
since I met her when I was 19.
Were you drumming then? Or was that pre?
Well, I drummed my whole life, and then I met Gina when I was 19, but kind of started dating when I was 20. And when we started dating, Gina was like, oh, I had this boyfriend. So I was a drummer my whole life, but I was on hiatus from drumming because of my family situation. I was just like, got rid of that part of my life. And then when I met Gina and we started dating, she was like, oh yeah, my other boyfriend, Tommy, like before, he was a drummer. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. I said, well, I used to play drums. And she kind of gave me this like, oh, really? And I was
know what a drummer is, yeah.
And I was like, yeah, really? Like, or that's how I took it. And so hey, Dad, do we still have that drum kit laying around? And
did you really?
I called my dad, and he's like, yeah, I got it set up here. I'm like, great, I'll take that set. And I set it up. And this is my version. This is my story. This is my, Gina might be like, dude, you're a little off, but it's great for the podcast. But I set it up at the house because Gina had a house with some roommates, and so they let me like set it up in the front room.
In their place, not your place.
Yeah. Because I didn't really have a place. I was like, living at my dad's, with my stepmom Patty, and so I was living there, so I couldn't really do it there, and so I set it up there. And I remember when they were gone one day, I just started jamming, and I was like super rusty, but like, oh, like I do know how to play drums. Like I've played my whole life. I just took like a long break because of just kid stuff. I'm at that time in my life, so. So Gina, we've been together since I was 20. She's amazing. We have two beautiful kids. We have Zoe, who's 23 and married to Cody. And we have a great extended family because of that. And then we have Luca. She's at Samford in Alabama. She's in college. She is, it's her second year there. Great. Just couldn't be happier about, our current situation. So, and
it's wild because you look back and there's a lot of chapters to your marriage, a lot of chapters to your family. Right. But I'll rewind to one moment in the story, and Gina experienced something pretty transformational and kind of hard to explain, right? Number of years ago. I don't know how much you want to share about that, but
no, I mean, I do want to share because, I think a lot of my life, I know a lot of my life has changed from that day. It was, there's a lot of people in my life now that were part of that original thing. And you were, there was a lot of, it's probably like a story for another day. Because there's so many layers to it. We could talk for an hour on how it all shook out, And
John Bach's part of that story.
Yeah, I mean, John Bach's part of that story. Danielle's part of that story. Josh Silverberg, who was on the Friday.
Yeah.
I saw Josh on a Friday night at a Matt Redman show. I met him the first time there, and he said, "Hey, can I pray for anybody?" And he said, I said, "Yeah, I pray for my wife. She has rheumatoid arthritis and the stuff." And he's like, "Oh, okay, cool." So he prayed. And then the next morning I woke, and he said, "Text your wife John 10:10." So I text her John 10:10 at like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night on a Friday. Get home late Friday night. She's already asleep. Her phone's off. I get up at 4 for a run, right? A big run. And that's when John Bach calls me out of the blue. He texts me out of the blue at 4 something in the morning. "Hey, are you up?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm up." He said, "Hey, I had a dream last night, and God's going to heal Gina this weekend." And I'm like, and I just start crying because I'm like, there's no way. Like, how did last night happen? What Josh was praying, and he was saying Gina's going to get healed this weekend. And my friend John, who's several miles away, has zero connection to this moment at all. How did he have that same dream in the middle of the night to call me this morning? And so I just, with my eyes just wet and just crying, and I just put on my stuff and I just took off into the mountains from my house. And I was gone for hours. And then Gina gets this text, John 10:10. Nothing else, nothing before it, nothing after it, just John 10:10, not read John 10:10. So she reads it, the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but I give everlasting life, right? Mm-hmm. Paraphrase.
Life to the full.
Yeah. Whatever version. I'm not going to go King James on you. And and so she has her coffee and does her reading, and she's like, okay. So she's searching for all these podcasts on John 10:10, just like kind of like, doing this sort of try to find something, and finds Ruthie Kim she was like speaking at Reality San Francisco. And Ruthie Kim, she does this whole thing on John 10:10. And she says, and this couple things she said was, "Are you an unbelieving believer? Are you waiting for the next shoe to drop?" And that just like crushed Gina. Because Gina's like, it's hard to, so funny. It's been many years, 2019. It's hard to process, but Gina's lost like her dad horrifically in front of her when she was 12 in a motorcycle accident. She was on her little motorcycle, and her dad was in front of her in a sand dune, like a dune buggy, and he happened to not have his thing. And as the thing was about to flip, Gina got sand in her goggles. And so she had to stop. And by the time she took it off, and it was already over, and people whisked her away. And then Gina's mom died suddenly, like on the table at the hospital, like with a routine thing that my stepmom, Patty, just was like a big mentor to Gina for our whole family, like just died. So that was like, I think Gina basically like that was like that. What's going to happen next? Like that's the narrative of my life. Like, well, who's gonna leave me again? Yeah. Is it going to be Anthony? Is it going to be my kids? And so she was just like wrestling with that whole thing. And then she has this dream Saturday night, and she's asking me stuff, and I'm just like, oh, I don't know. I saw her on Saturday. I said, oh, I have no idea. Like, it's just, I'm playing it off because I'm thinking like, I want to see what's going to happen at Sunday.
And what's crazy is that week that all that's unfolding, what's unfolding from my vantage point is early in the week. It was like a Monday or Tuesday. I wake up early in the morning, and I never have had this experience before or since, but I got this overwhelming sense, I guess, from God. Someone's going to get healed at Bel Air this Sunday in service.
Yeah.
And I wake up, very early in the morning. I just get this overwhelming sense, and I'm praying. And that same person, Jonathan Bach, that texted me. He says, I don't know what to do with this, but I feel like someone's going to get healed this Sunday at Bel Air. I just woke up and I had that same sense from God. All right. So I called an emergency elder meeting that Thursday. So the night before you went to the Matt Redman concert, there was an emergency elder meeting.
Wow.
And I just said, look, I don't know what to deal with this. I don't know how to navigate this, but let's just pray about it. And if this is what God wants to do, let's be ready for it. Let's just be obedient. Let's be faithful. And this I never call emergency elder meetings,
Right.
And we gathered together, and they're like, "Well, what's it going to look like?" I'm like, "I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't do like healing services. I don't, I'm not going to name a whole bunch of names of people
Right.
that my mind goes to. Like they're the people that do those services, right?
Yeah.
And I just said, I don't know, but let's just pray about it. Maybe God will reveal to us what it looks like. So that goes into then the Sunday.
Yeah, so the Sunday comes around. I happen to be playing on the worship team.
That's right. I forget that.
So I'm playing on worship team, and I wake up early.
Which wasn't an every Sunday sort of thing.
Nope. I wake up super early. I'm putting my shoes on, and Gina woke up, came out, and was like, "Oh, you're leaving?" I'm like, "Yeah, I gotta go," because I'm holding this in my mind. I'm like, I just have to see what's going to happen. Like, I just didn't talk about anything that happened. I just kept deflecting, like, oh, I don't know. And so Gina comes out and she's like, honey, in the middle of the night, I was like, God was like, get on your knees and pray. And she was like, what? I don't do this. So she's like, get on your knees. So she got up, she prayed, and then she got up, and then she's like, pray over Anthony. And then said, pray over Anthony. Anthony's going to have the gift of healing. And so she goes through this, like at night, she goes to bed, she wakes up and she tells me, and she's like, honey, in the middle of the night, I woke up and I started praying for you. And the Lord told me to tell you that you're going to have the gift of healing. And now all I could hear was healing. It has nothing to do with the gifting. It was just like, I just hear healing. And I'm like, oh, and more tears for Anthony. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, I can't handle this. Okay, I'll see you at church. And so I bail. And I go, and this whole time I'm at church, I'm thinking, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to go on? And you get up and you start, doing your sermon. You're like, okay, this is out of my comfort zone.
I went through the whole thing. Like, before I'm going to preach, let me just tell you what.
Yeah.
It was so not slick at all.
Right.
It was like, you all know me. I've been the pastor of this church for 5 years. What I'm about to say is really outside of the norm, but here's what my experience has been. I don't know what's going to happen today, but one of the names of God is Jehovah Rapha. And I said, let me hear everyone say Jehovah Rapha. Everyone says Jehovah Rapha. And the name in Hebrew is the God who heals. So I said, healing isn't just something that God does, but it's part of who God is. And what's wild, I don't know if you know this part of the story, we were audio streaming our services back then live. And one of our elders, Melanie Marquis, was driving and running late with her husband, RJ, and kids, listened to it online. And she went to say Jehovah Rapha like everybody else in the sanctuary, but the words couldn't come out of her mouth. It was like they were stuck in her throat. And there was another point where I said, say Jehovah Rapha, and she couldn't say it. So I'll bring that thread back in a moment. But anyway, I preached the sermon. She now arrives, and I pray at the end of the sermon. I sit back down. Everyone's looking at me like, aren't you supposed to like pray for healing now? I'm like, I don't know what to do.
You're like, what? Yeah.
And now musical worship's going on, and all of a sudden I get a text from Melanie Marquis, the elder who couldn't say the word Jehovah Rapha. Right. And she's like, I don't know what this means, but I couldn't say these words. I feel like there's someone here today who's had trouble swallowing or choking, and I feel like God wants to heal them today. So then now I've got this on my phone. I don't know if you remember this part. I like interrupt musical worship in between songs, and I get up and I'm like, I know this sounds odd, but I've got a text from one of our elders, Melanie. It's just so not produced or slick. And I just read it, that God wants to heal somebody who's had, problem with choking or swallowing. And this was also out of my comfort zone. I said, if that's you, God's going to heal you today, which I never talk like that. Wow. It's always like, maybe God wants to heal,
Hey, God, you want to do this? Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I found out afterwards that there was someone there who had multiple times been choking on food, couldn't swallow, had significant issues. They were really concerned, had gone to the different doctors. They didn't know what it was. They were warning them about possibly choking on food and dying. There was something going on. And she said in that moment when I said that God wants to heal you today, I know this sounds so weird. I'm going to lose half the audience by saying this.
But it's just
what I experienced.
It's the truth.
She said she came up afterwards and received prayer and complete healing from it. But she said it was as if in that moment, this like ray of light came out of my mouth in saying those words. And it wasn't me or Drew. You know, it was God's going to heal you today. Not once God's going to heal you today. She said it was as if that ray of light just went in and just pulled something out of her.
Wow.
And then she came forward, received prayer. But then multiple people were coming forward at that moment, receiving prayer.
Yeah.
And Gina had her experience.
Well, yeah. And, you know, to go back to what you said, like with some of the audience or whatever, like, I think, I would actually argue, I think like most people are hungry for like supernatural. And it's just, what's the source of that? Like, we've all seen things
that you can't explain.
And it's just, as far as history goes, it's just, what's the source of that? You know what I mean? And so I think there's like a need in people to like know more, to feel deeper, to experience supernatural. And I think like when we talk about that, because I've seen like, I'm a Christian, like I've seen some stuff that I'm like, whoa, relax guys. Like this is way out there. So a lot of that wild stuff can like just cancel out all the other things, but it's actually not true. You know,
so you're saying where it becomes, say more about that. What do you mean by wild stuff?
Well, you know, when you see like growing up, like people have seen like, you know, and people falling down and like, it's like, it's like
the stuff of memes today,
right?
That go viral.
Yeah, there's
like
somebody with a lightsaber. I don't want to say anybody's names because I don't want to do them. I don't want to do them wrong. But like slaying people down and stuff like that. But it's like, just because there's some of those things, it doesn't mean that it's not
that
true.
All of it isn't true. Yeah,
it doesn't mean that the power of God can't actually do that
if God wants to.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
But God generally likes to quietly just go in and just do surgery. And so that you will have a testimony to say. So like, I don't know what to say, but I had a tumor and God healed me. And the doctor said, I don't know why. But ironically, so Gina has never had really like a wild experience like that. But Gina, when it came time for prayer, Gina went up for prayer and she really doesn't go up for prayer. She's like, always like, I'm good. I'm great. I read my Bible. We're good. I love Jesus, you know. And she went up and went straight to Danielle. I mean, there's so many layers of the story, but for the sake of time, she goes to Danielle.
An amazing leader in our church.
Yeah, Donnie is like the best. And she had like a prayer veil on, which she doesn't wear.
Never wears that.
She never wears. She had this like prayer veil on. Where it's like, where are we? You know? And so Gina goes up to her because Gina knows her and trusts her. And she goes up and just starts getting prayer. And just that was it. Danielle just starts going to town. She just starts praying for Gina and starts praying for her and just like saying all this stuff that's like really hitting home to Gina. Like, wow, how does she know this or whatever? And her and Brenda, then she brings Brenda in, Brenda Moore, right? Brenda Moore, and they usher her into this like beautiful stained glass room and
a little prayer chapel.
Yeah, the prayer chapel here at Bel Air. And then everybody's gone except for you're still around. John Bach, Waldo, is around, and my daughter Zoe. And we're in there, and these women, then Connie, what's Connie's last name?
Engel.
Yeah, Connie Engel. She ends up in there. And now all we can hear is this commotion of like
shut doors,
and just praying. You just hear women praying, and you hear music being blasted, like Old Testament music, like, you know, I'm like, what's going on in there? And these women
were they doing a phone or something?
Yeah, like Donnie had some like, you know, rabbinical like worship
Old
or something.
Testament music.
Yeah, Old Testament, you know what I mean? It's like, oh my gosh, like, and we're just sitting there and you could hear these like women just praying. And to get to the end, all of a sudden the doors open and Gina walks out and it was like perfect complexion, like all of this that's been on her whole life is just gone. She looked angelic, like beautiful, like her skin color, like She just looked like peace was just...
Because it was so much more than the rheumatoid arthritis, like you were saying.
It was actually...
the heaviness of loss.
Right. It was the heaviness of loss. And at that point, like, she got healed. And I was thinking it was going to be her rheumatoid. She was going to come out and be like, look, I can grab a 25-pound weight. And it's like, that's not the case.
It was a deeper healing that was
It was
needed.
a deeper internal healing that Gina has been set free from. She doesn't see relationships like they're going to end. Right? She's not fearful that I'm going to die. Like all of this unexpected stuff. And that's, again, and Gina actually did have quite a radical experience. She got pinned to the ground. Nobody was touching her, but she felt like she was on the front of an airplane. And so that was a first for her.
That was inside the prayer chapel.
That was inside
day?
the prayer chapel. Like slain.
Hard to explain some of these things,
it's just,
right?
It's like, I mean, I get it. It's kind of weird, right? If you don't believe and you don't, it's because it's like, I think, we read in scripture and like, like healing in scripture, like it still happens today. It's not, doesn't just go away. You know what I mean?
And what's wild is we ended up having another worship night and just sharing the stories a number of months later, and then more people were healed.
Well, even on that day, there was more people healed.
Oh, yeah.
Julie, Dawn.
Yes.
Like there was this like outbreak of healing.
Yes.
Like over the course of days. And then what was happening, even John Bach, I swear I have more friends than you and John, but I keep talking about you too. I actually don't really have too many other friends but you guys. But even John was like, even experiencing what he experienced in boldness, he was just cruising around and he ended up meeting somebody and was like, they had a specific issue. And John was like, oh, I'll just step out in faith and pray for them. And dude got healed. Like crazy stuff. And you can't really explain it, and you just have to receive it and just go like, well, this is what it is. This is the truth. This is my testimony. Like I was this and now I'm not. This person had this and now they don't. Like you can't argue with somebody's testimony.
And it's impossible to manufacture that because it was like this window of time opened up and God let a few people know in advance, leaders, myself, John Bach, others, and then the elders, so we got to join in what God wanted to do. But it's not like we can then say, oh, great, now I've got this trick or I've got this magic wand or now I know the right combination of words to say so that I can do the healing. Yeah. But it's a matter of, okay, God, what do you want to do? And how do I join you in it? And that leads a bit to, so you were a drummer for many years, did a lot of touring, you transitioned out of that, and you've been a builder in Los Angeles. And over the years have built up a tremendous reputation as a really high-end builder. You've got a great team working with quite an extensive clientele list.
The who's who.
The who's who in Los Angeles. And, that's to be entrusted such a big project is no small thing. And before we get to the last couple of months and how many, many, many years of building have led to where we are today, what are some things in the small things, the unseen things that are a core part of how you approach the work that you do? Because I don't believe that you're at where you are today, let alone having the opportunity to build for some of the most well-known people on the planet without having a number of intentional things that you've done over the years. So looking back, what are some things that you would say are really core ingredients to how you approach your work?
I think one of the most important things for me is that the people that I'm working for trust me, because there's a lot at stake, right? There's a lot of money. It's a big project. When they start with me, it's going to be a long relationship from like as small as a year to like 2 to 2.5 years. And so for me, I don't want to tell them to trust me because I don't need to do that. But I need to show you by my actions and how my values and like my heart and like the things that I say and the way I carry myself, and like let that be a reflection of developing trust,
Because it's earned, right? You got to earn the trust.
Yeah, and so number one is just like do what you say and say what you mean, right? It's just like right off the bat. Like, I'm not going to, if I say I'm going to call you, I'm going to call you. If you send me an email, I'm going to get back to you respectfully. Part of how I am wired though, like I'm always like kind of, I'm here. So just part of my nature is paying attention to people, you know, and doing that. So I'm responsive, right? And just off the bat, when you're that way, when you do what you say you're going to do and you're responsive to people, and I'm funny, like, you know, I mean, I just do, well, I have a sense of humor, I should say. I'm not funny like people say I'm funny, but I have a sense of humor. I love what I do. I feel like I'm pretty good at it. I care about the details. So that's it. Like, it's pretty easy, you know? And then when you develop that with one person, it just keeps going.
Then they share with somebody else. Oh, you've got to talk to, if you're going to do a project, you got to talk to Anthony.
Yeah, because there's not too many times where I'm competing against other builders to build. Like yes, I do have some jobs where I'm like up against a couple other builders and they're looking at the numbers and they care. But most people, by the time it gets to me, like from the architect to me, it's either the architect says, you want to work with Anthony, or we meet and they're like, yeah, I want to work with Anthony. Like it's so personality driven, you know, like my personality. I mean, I've worked for like some actor people, like super artsy and super like this, or like a bigger CEOs of like big companies. So they're a little bit more like business minded. So, you know, I can kind of thread all that, you know, but I still like to have fun. Like I always say, like, if I'm not having fun, like I don't want to do it. If it's not a creative project and I don't want to do it, you know what I mean? Like I'm married, I have kids, I'm happy. I'm like happily married. It's because of that, because I don't do things that, you know, just do it for money. Like if this is a bad fit, like I'm just not going to do it. I recently did a bad fit and it was been punishing.
Don't want to do that.
It kind of took me down a bit, to be honest. It was actually part of my collapse. Took a job that I probably shouldn't have. So
all part of the unraveling to
to
realign, rebuild. You know, it reminds me, there's this, it's often a paraphrase quote. St. Francis of Assisi is paraphrased as saying, preach the gospel always, and if necessary, if you must, use words.
Yeah, it's great.
Let your life speak, as others have said.
Yeah.
And would you say that occasionally, after many months or even years of letting your life speak, of kind of preaching the gospel with saying what you'll do and doing what you say, and, you know, all those things that you just mentioned, does it ever cross over into words at any point where people might discover that you're a Christian, or do you keep that under wraps most of the time? Does that ever?
No, I mean, well, I have a cross on my hands. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the cross now has been, so many people have crosses that don't act, you know, like a believer, or they might be, but yeah, I mean, stuff comes up.
Every once in a while, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it does. And I mean, like, for example, the clients that it was just a little bit more challenging for me. At one point, she needed a nanny, another one. And she had asked me, you know, I said, well, I know like a pool of like domestic services kind of companies, and I like different connections that I have, like I could try to help you out. And she's like, no, I think I'm going to use the one that I have. And I'm like, oh, okay. I just thought I would help you out. And she's like, well, you would love her. I'm like, why is that? She's like, because she's a Christian. I'm like, oh, okay. She's a Christian. I'm like, how do you know I'm a Christian? She's like, oh, I can tell. I was like, I hope that's a good thing. And she's like,
that's a good thing.
I hope it's a good thing. And she's like, it's a good thing. She's like, I like Christians. And I'm like, great. Yeah. And then just even like another client recently had like that they're friends. Actually, they're not even like clients. I mean, they're still my clients, but they're just friends. They had a stalker type incident. And for the first time in 6 years or something since I've been friends with them, like I got a call and she was pretty upset. And it was the first time ever. It was on a Monday. And I remember, and I just said, no. And I just said, can I just pray the way that I know how to pray? And she said, yeah. And we prayed. And like,
And was that one of those like moments where you just felt such clarity to do it and you stepped out?
Well, it didn't. Yeah, I had no
just-
choice.
yeah,
I just
yeah.
started talking. I just started praying because I was like, and I remember going like, no, because there was some trouble with. Oh gosh, she's probably gonna hear this after. Maybe whatever. She knows I love her. Because
But we're pretty general right now.
well, yeah, but if she listens, it doesn't even matter because the point was it was a very terrible thing they were going through.
Yeah.
And when somebody does something like that to you, like enters into your house and breaks into your house and does something weird, you just feel violated. You feel taken over. And when she was upset and crying, I just said, no. I said, we're going to put a stake in the ground right now. This is your home. I said, I built this home for you. And this is your home. And we're going to pray right now. I said, can I pray? And I just started praying. She was like, yeah. And so I started praying. And I was like, I hope that wasn't weird for you. I said, I hope that wasn't weird. She's like, no, that was great. Thank you so much. And it was like, but the thing is like, I'm a Christian, man. I'm like full on believer, right? But the thing is like, they just know that I love them.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter. Like, you're not a believer. Like, cool. Or maybe you are and I don't even know. Okay, fine. Like, I don't have to be surrounded by all believers. In fact, like, I'm not trying to convert people, right? I'm just trying to love on people.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to do my thing and like let my actions speak louder. And if somebody's curious and they want to, great. Other than that, like, we're good. Like, I love you to death and we're going to hang out and we're going to do our thing. And like, I just don't live my life trying to like separate it. You know what I mean? Like the political thing and the this thing and the religious thing and all that thing. Like, I'm a believer. I believe in Jesus and I'm going to do my best to walk in like the fruit of the Spirit and not worry about the giftings of the Spirit. You know what I mean? Like, if I get some of those, right, great. But like the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, gentleness, self-control, right? Like if I can just operate somewhere in there daily, and I know it's like one thing, trying to get all those sorted out, and I, kind of blow it, but like, yeah. But like I tell people like, yeah, I'm full on. I'm a full on believer. So what? Like, let's hang out. It doesn't matter that you're not. And people can't even do that now politically. I'm pro-Trump or I'm pro-Biden, it's like, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
it's so easy to classify and
just like-
categorize and stereotype.
it's like, that's like a teeny part of your life. How about just breaking bread together and just talking about life and your kids and your family and where you're from and what you love, and do you love art and do you love cooking and what else do you love? Do you love to travel? Let's go, let's hang.
human to human, natural connections.
And nobody's
people,
doing that
loving
anymore,
people.
man.
Yeah.
Nobody's doing it. And
or at least that those that are doing it aren't as platformed in the way that media tends to really platform and provide. But things can test that, and yet sometimes things can accelerate it. In January 7th and January 8th, seems like they've accelerated things for you. So January 7th, 2025, fires start in the Palisades. And then in the evening, fires start, what ended up being called the Eaton Fire. But you were scheduled to work a job up in the Kenneloa Estates area of Altadena, I think starting that Wednesday, the 8th. So you were ready to go. You had a big...
I actually kind of started.
You'd already started.
A little bit.
So you're working in Altadena as a builder.
Oh, yeah.
And these fires hit
Pasadena, exactly.
Pasadena, technically.
I guess the
right
other
on the
side
edge,
of the street. The other side of the street is... Yeah.
And so walk us through a bit of that, the first 36 hours.
Yeah, so meaning like, well, because I texted you that night, remember on the 7th, and I said, dude, Eaton Canyon, you're like, oh, my sister's house, and, my mom. And,
we've run that.
Yeah, all those,
Mount Wilson Toll Road, it's all right there.
And then you gave me the app, Watch
Duty became
Watch
Duty became the most downloaded app on the App Store. Free app,
right?
Helps collate all the reports.
Yeah,
it was like all of LA down. I had it from the year prior. I think
well,
Mark
you
Pine,
gave me all the layers.
Yeah, dude.
Oh, Pine
gave it to me.
Pine X.
Yeah. Yes.
We do hard things. You gave me the layers, and so before I went to bed, just remember, well, first of all, it was uncharacteristic, like being in this specific spot because my spot is in Pasadena. And it was I've never heard the wind like this. Stuff shaking, I've never heard shaking. Like,
it topped out over 100 miles an hour.
Right. And so I went to bed. We were texting, and you said, are you called me and said, do this, put this layer on. I tracked it. It was like maybe 400 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Went to bed. I woke up. It was, I don't know, 2,000 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Like
exponential.
And I was up at 4. And then I got like a text at like 4:10 from my painter. Hey, are you up? And I'm like, yeah, I'm up. And we're just like texting back and forth. And he called me. Hey, man, this is like a really serious fire up there. And this, I'm like, oh, yeah, okay, cool. Then my buddy Micah, who you know, texts me and says, hey, man, this fire thing is crazy. Like, what are you doing? Just come over. So it's he's like, come over and have coffee. And he lives in Montrose, which is pretty close, you know. And so we pretty much I go to his house, and I kind of packed my bag because I was like, they were talking about this evacuations and it heading down towards 210, like Pasadena, where we are on the other side. And I was like, I'm going to bring my bag in case they like block you out of here or something. And when I took off, I had to go to the gas station just because I was low on gas. And it was black outside, like black. Like
all the power gone out at that point.
Yeah, I was like, It was dark, and I was like, this is like next level. And I remember I went to the gas station, and there was a little energy of like, what's going on? And when I was there, I said, you know what, I'm going to go across the street to the paint store and just grab some masks because I don't want to be breathing all this in, you know? And by the time I went to the paint store and I came out, I looked across the street and there was a line down the street to go to the gas station. Like I missed this line. So panic is setting in, right? People are like, everything's going to shut down, whatever. So I go straight to Micah's. We go to his house. I help him cut down a tree, you know, like a little hedgy kind of tree thing and this thing. And we're just going, and he looks at me and he's like, let's just go. Let's go out there.
Back to Altadena.
And I'm like, really? He's like, yeah, let's go. So we loaded up his truck, chainsaws and shovels and this and that and all the tools and just whatever. We just grabbed a bunch of stuff, threw it in there. And we and his wife Darcy and his daughter Brooklyn, she was there. So the 4 of us just packed up his truck and we took off. And we got off at what's the JPL exit? I can't think of the one off of 210 right then.
Yeah, going left off the rules, Linda Vista or something like that.
Yeah. So we get up there and it's just, so where Montrose was, it was like there was nothing happening. Like it was crystal clear, blue skies. And as we drove down 210, it was like you went into the like
Lion's Den.
You know that movie Sicario or whatever? Like
dude.
Cue the Sicario music. It was like, and I was like, this is insane. So we get off the freeway, and as we're getting off the freeway, like there's kind of maybe a couple sheriffs, you know, like blocking. It's kind of like, hey, don't come here. You know, it was like very
super early
on. Like, okay, so we're like, okay, we won't go up that street, and we just went down like a block or two and just like turned up. And from that point on, we spent the entire day out there, from one side of Altadena to all the way to the Eaton side. Just going through, helping people get stuff out of their house, grabbing pails of water because there's no water. So we're
for context, houses are on fire.
Right. So
trees are on fire. This is not up in the mountains getting nearby.
No, this is like neighborhood. Like
you're in the middle.
It's like if
you're in the middle of it.
Yeah, like if you're in the valley, if you're listening to this, like San Fernando Valley, it's like Van Nuys is on fire. And when you're driving, you see one house is gone, but the remembrance of a chimney. And so it's been gone, like smoldering, done, except for like a 6-foot flame of gas, right, blowing out of the ground still. And the one next to it is freshly afire. Like, I can't figure out the timing of that, but I know the house next door did not burn down in, like an hour. Like, it's just, I don't know what happened. And this was going on everywhere. We would drive down the street, there'd be like one house untouched, the one next to it is engulfed in flames, and the next two have been out for like a while. And it was fire everywhere, every street, fire, people, just everywhere. Firemen you could see the look in their eyes of just, they've never seen something like this. They're doing their best, like they have the best hearts, like that's their entire job is to serve people and help people. And they're like, we can barely do anything. Like, there's no water and so we were even in a place where we're helping the firemen with like buckets of water, keeping the one house from catching on fire. We cut down all these like hedges because the one other house next to it was burning still, and we were trying to save the house next to it. So it was just that. It was like nonstop all day. And then the nighttime hits, and then when it's night, you're like, oh, what are those guys walking around with hoods on? What's going on over there? Those guys look pretty sketchy looking over the wall. And then you're like, oh, right, here comes the looting portions.
Well, things are still on fire.
Right, things are on fire.
Still very active.
Yeah, and by the way, like a lot of people are gone because they bailed, but a lot of people are still there. Like I saw countless people watch their homes burn to the ground. Like my house, I'm on the sidewalk.
And this is not on the news like so many millions saw. You were there on the ground with people for hours and hours.
Yeah. Doing anything you could. Like literally praying for people. Like this lady came rushing into her driveway on this like desolate street with like telephone poles down. We're helping this one family get stuff out, whatever they could, throw it in the back of their car. And she had to come back to her home that was not engulfed yet, soon to be though. She had to come back to get records for her pet in order to put her pet into a shelter. So the shelters were like, well, we need your shot records. And
so she runs back up.
And she's like
neighborhood
just
on
hysterical.
fire.
You know what I mean? This lady, she's probably in her late 60s, 70s. And you could tell her husband, they were just frazzled. Like, I mean, it's so emotional and so tragic what's happening. And you can see what's going to happen to this neighborhood. You can see it closing in. And so it was like a moment of like, if I can just pray with her and just give her some peace and send her on her way, like something, because practically there's nothing I can do. Like she's got her paperwork. I can't do anything for her, but I can just pray for peace for her. And so we just had a bunch of that kind of stuff all throughout the day. And, you know, when you watch somebody watch their home burn to the ground, everything that they own is in there besides maybe what they got out, right? Like everything else is gone. When you watch that and you watch that over and over and over throughout the day several times, like I knew one thing. I said, I have to do something. Just something. Like I can't not do anything. And then that's when like, you know, you called and you're like, hey, can you go check on my sister's house? And we went to check on your sister's house. And there was other people like, hey, you know, Nick and Heidi were like, can you go check on Gordy's family's house? And so we did that. And the father was there and he's getting stuff out. So we help him out. And we're like cutting a tree down that fell. And, you know, just that. And so that was like the initial, like, let me do something. You know, we're here. We're inside the line. Like, let's not.
First response.
Let's not waste this moment.
Yeah.
Let's respectfully stay out of the fireman's way.
Yeah.
Because that was pretty easy to do since it was so early on, the response, like there wasn't enough yet. People weren't there yet.
Yeah. California and other nations hadn't shown up.
Right.
It's so amazing that they did, but in those first few hours, they're still mobilizing.
Well, because the thing is like, you know, so many people were just saying, you know, I can't believe they responded this way. It's like, it takes a while to mobilize. You can't just call Phoenix and say, hey, man, can you guys cruise
Teleport
out?
here.
Right. Like there's stuff that needs to be worked out, you know, like it costs money for them to, you know, so there's so many things that.
So you're helping out, you're on the ground doing all that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So we're just trying to do whatever we can do. And I was like, I'm just going to do something. And that's it. Like, because honestly, I think the barrier for most people, they have these big ideas and they just shut down. They say, what can I do to change anything? I can't change anything.
What kind of impact can I make?
Yeah, I can't make an impact. I'm like, well, you can do just a little something. Like I've told several friends of mine, little things like that in their life, like just go do something. And, you know, you have to do it. Yeah, so that was basically the 8th, trickled into the 9th a little bit, and then it was like National Guard, every street was shut down. And then I just then I was left with like, what do I do? Now what do I do? And it's like, oh, Pasadena Convention Center is the FEMA headquarters. Okay, let me go over there and let me see if I can help out. And I was helping out, you know, try to like, because Whitney Martin, who works with my wife, is awesome. And she was trying to figure out what can I do to help. I want to do something. So she was going down to the Red Cross. Well, it was before it was Red Cross. It was just kind of we just need
local
volunteers.
Community.
And she helped and did whatever she could. And I remember going there on a Saturday and I saw there was this line for FEMA for like a $200 check. And it was like way down Colorado. Yeah. Way down Colorado and way down the other street. And I was like, I don't know if I would wait in that line for $200, like a mile for like 6-7 hours for $200. And I was like, that's actually the crisis here. Those people waiting in line for $200, how are they going to get their homes rebuilt? Mm-hmm. Like, some of them don't have insurance. Some of them do. I know there's going to be a gap. I know the insurance is never going to do it. What do these people do if they can't afford to rebuild? What's going to happen? And so then it was just like, my mind is just going. It's going. Then I was like, spent the weekend doing that. And then the following week, I went to Tennessee on Wednesday. Went to Tennessee, see my family's over there. Everybody's hanging out, and went to dinner the first night when I got back. And I had the most trying 5 days of like my life, almost. Like, I think it was sort of like, I would equate it to like a PTSD moment. Like, I feel a little ridiculous saying that, but I'm a high, like, emotional, like, I'm an empath for sure. And so helping in those days and doing all this and that, when I came and I went to Franklin.
Because you were helping the greatest disaster in LA history.
Right.
So as an empath.
For days. And then even after the fires, trying to help people there that lost everything, just trying to scrape at the FEMA center and all the things going on, and then meeting people in the community in like Pasadena where we are, and have lost everything, and you're seeing people and people are crying, and like, I'm at Tartine, which is amazing, but I was at Tartine, this lady, like, I just asked her how she was doing. I said, hey, how you doing? She's like, and she just started bawling to me just while she's getting a coffee. Mm-hmm. And so I end up, I go to Franklin, we're having dinner, and I was just like, nothing's happening here. Like, everything's fine. And it doesn't matter where you go, here, Phoenix, or you go to Phoenix, you go to Seattle, everybody's just living their life.
Or even for most of LA.
Right.
How quick it was to move on for so many.
Yeah, go to Newport. Everybody's chilling out, right?
Yeah.
They're like back at the wedge. And I had, from basically that Wednesday through Sunday, I slept horribly. Mm. I felt like anxiety and depression, like just this wave of just this heaviness over me. I was like weird with my wife, like needy, like, and I'm not needy, and she's just like, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? Like, wasn't sleeping at night, like getting very like my whoop was just like red, bro. Like, just like, it was like, I think it stopped at like 14%. It's like, bro, you're dead. Like, it was bad. Like, my sleep, everything was just a mess. So I leave, I go back Monday, go to sleep Monday night, have another horrible night. I'm back in Pasadena because a lot of the meetings that I had were gone, right? Because so I had booked, week. And I woke up Tuesday morning super, super early. And I just came out, I had my coffee. I went out to my front spot, like where I sit in the morning. And I just started bawling my head off, just like weeping. Like, because I was at my lowest. Like, remember, I recovered through the new year. I felt amazing. Yeah. Came into the new year feeling like recovered and rested, and then went down this heavy path and just crashed. But this one was spiritual. It was different than the physical, because I can actually turn the physical part on, like, no big deal. But the spiritual, what happened was, like, I went through this like spiritual, emotional thing in Los Angeles for those days with the fire. And my cup spiritually was quite empty because I had been in production mode for so long that I wasn't really putting in my time with God, like praying and just meditating on the word and like all that stuff. I wasn't filling my cup. So it just got so drained out spiritually that I just kind of just came unglued Tuesday morning on my office floor, just bawling my face off. And I felt God just go like, get up. Like, you're forgiven. Let's go. Let's get into this. And I just kind of got up, and I just felt like, it was like I had to, like, here we go for the super spiritual, but I had to like repent.
For like, doing it in your own strength, basically?
Yeah, just basically saying, God, like, I've been doing everything on my own for a while now, and I just need to repent of that. And I need you to make me whole again, And immediately, like, I got up off the floor and I just felt like the weight just come off me. And later that day, I ended up talking to my buddy Micah and Nick Tortorici, and they told me a lot about myself. Really, Micah was just like,
your closest friends, trustworthy. You give weight to their perspective.
Yep. And Micah said to me on the phone call, he's like, Anthony, he's like, the way you're wired, he's that you take on people's stuff. He's like, so he said, for example, for him, he's like, I can go out and like fight fires and do all this stuff, and like I can just I can go to bed that night, like no big deal. He's like, you can't. Like, you take that on.
You absorb it.
You absorb the emotion. You absorb the spiritual. And since my cup was so empty, I had nothing left. And he also said, and I'm sorry I didn't protect you from that. Like, that's the power of community.
Wow.
He knows me, he loves me, and he's like, I'm sorry I didn't protect you from that, and I need to know that about you. And somewhere around that point, I was driving in my car, and God goes, build 7 houses for people that can't afford to rebuild.
And was it like an audible voice? Was it a feeling?
It feels...
That's a big statement to make,
It wasn't me.
Yeah.
It was in my mind. It didn't come through the airwaves.
But crystal
it was
clear?
Build house. It's almost more like when God speaks to me, it's like a ba-da-da, like in my head. Could have been spoken. But it was like, it's very clear, and I don't speak clearly like that. I'll go, well, maybe I should. I'm not sure, but boom, but boom. But I know when it's God, because he's like, build 7 houses for those that can't afford to rebuild. And so I was like, okay. Then I immediately shared it with Gina. And I told Gina, and she's like, okay, like, what does that mean? And then we just began to process, like, what does that mean? And this is a unique time for me. And like, I'm a builder. I'm in Los Angeles. Like, this is a unique position being a builder. Like, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of homes that are going to need to be rebuilt. But what's going to get rebuilt? Who's not going to be able to rebuild? Who's going to have to leave? Who's going to have all these things? And I said, this is a unique opportunity for me to use my actual giftings, right? To like communicate who God is. Like, he's the creator. Like, he loves you. He wants to do, like, what can I do? Like this, I got to do this. And this is just 7 houses. Like, we're going to do this, not in my own strength. And so ever since that time in the morning, like, I really have doubled down on my time with God, just like prayer and just scripture and just letting the story of Nehemiah, rebuilding the wall, with community, not Nehemiah like bunk, 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 stacking, the wall. It was like through community.
Mobilize the whole community.
Right, mobilize the whole community. And so like the book of Nehemiah has been like just washing over me. I'm just in it, my blue letter Bible and like a David Guzik commentary, just like crushing it, In
the deep end.
I have to, man. I have to.
And have you experienced, so repent, I love the image, repent, to change direction.
Yeah.
And so you've changed the direction away from doing things in your own strength to spend this time with the Lord.
Yeah.
Has that cup filled up? I mean, tangibly? Have you felt an immediate difference?
I have never felt more sure of what I'm doing in my life. And that's only because God's given me clarity.
Regarding these 7 houses?
Regarding these 7 houses and regarding who what he made me for. Like, I was made for this moment. Like, you and I, we've talked about that. Yeah. Like, I've never...
That book of Esther, Uncle Mordecai says to Queen Esther, perhaps you've been born for such a time as this.
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, as cheesy as it can sound for people, like, I was made for this. Like, oh, no. Like, because I've done a lot of things in my life. And I've always been like, is this it, God? Like, this is what you want me to do? Like, that's what I'm doing. Even as a builder, like, building great projects for people, whatever, right? All the things, all the beautiful jobs. And I'm thankful and I'm grateful and it's amazing. And I make a living at doing it. And it's like, I love my job and I love my guys that I work with and all the subs and the trades that I do. And I love the artistic and the creative nature of it. But there was always that thing in the back of my mind, like, is this it? Like, this is what I'm, like, this is it, right? I'm just going to ride it out like this. But now I'm like, oh yeah, this is it. And it's not just these 7 houses. It's like every part of it. It's like the building part is dialed in. You know what I mean? Like, that's cool. Like, I'm going to be able to build them, like, practically. Like, I've got all the guys, like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, logistically, this is what you do.
But able to, like I asked a woman yesterday for house number 2 that somebody brought to me. I asked her, we did a Zoom call, and she's amazing. And I asked her, she's a single mom with a kid. And I asked her, I said, well, she said something about hope and like not having hope. And then she was talking about itemizing everything that she has, because you need to itemize everything for insurance. She realized how many things she has that are just not important. Like, oh, I spent $75 on a ceramics cup or whatever. She's realizing that. And I asked her just a simple question of like, in all of this, like, who do you hope to become? And she just kind of looked at me like, wow, like, that's a great question. Because I'm kind of pushing reset in my life. Like, what's important to me? What's actually important to me? And her specific case, she, like most people, you know, financially, she struggles financially a bit. For sure. She's a single mom. And she has a gap. Like, the insurance is giving her $290 a square foot for her house. And that's not going to do it. It's not going to do it at all. I don't even know if it'll do a FEMA house. Like, I don't even know, you know? So the goal for me with 7 houses, which is happening right now, got the name, right? The name is there. Corporation.
So you're starting a nonprofit.
Oh, I'm starting a I didn't even say that. Yeah. I am starting a nonprofit.
Have you ever started a nonprofit before?
I've never had a nonprofit in my life.
Time.
Yeah.
First time.
Yeah.
And you're having to figure this out as you go, trying
Yeah.
to figure out what kind of lawyers do I talk to for this?
Yeah.
State of California,
Yeah.
articles of incorporation, all those things.
EIN, bank accounts, donation links, logo, not just for a t-shirt, but like, what does it look like when it's in a little circle on Instagram? And what does it look like? And
all the things you never had to think through.
And my daughter Zoe's been great for that. And so, yeah, I mean, but we're all in, and I'm taking it. It's a process because it's a bit. I have an architect signed on, Breland Harper, who I do a lot of work with, and
big time architects here in LA.
Yeah, I mean, they're amazing. And you know, the week before, I talked to them about my idea, my vision, right? Well, not my vision. You can edit it out. God's vision. No, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The week before I talked to them about it, they got a call from Architecture Magazine, and they were asking them kind of like, hey, what's going on with the building world in Los Angeles? And what are you guys doing? What projects do you have coming up? And what's the climate like post-fire and this and that? And so Peter and Michael are basically just talking about all the cool things that they have coming up. And
you were the partners of Breland Harper.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they said, and I think it was Peter, because I talked to him, Peter said, we're getting a lot of cool things, but the problem is that there's this socioeconomic gap between like the areas and the people that can afford to build and the ones that can't afford to rebuild. And he's like, and we don't have a lane for those that can't afford to rebuild. He's like, we just don't have that lane. He's like, and here you are, Anthony, right now, calling me, providing that lane. He's like, Michael and myself are all in on this. We want to help you. We want to do this with you. We're going to standardize some designs that are regional, historic, right? We're going to do it very sensitive to the period of when it was built, like, you know, Spanish bungalow, the craftsman bungalow. We're going to try to be sustainable. We're going to try to, you know, but the point is to people that don't even have the money to like barely afford a FEMA house, the idea is to give them something even better than what they had, something beautiful. You know, we're not talking about, you know, doing some like, you know, crazy Bel Air style thing, but we want to do like a regional historical, a home that is well built, that builds legacy for them again, because that's the most important thing, is to build legacy.
Because many of these homes are 1,200, 1,300 square foot homes, started in like the 20s and 30s, generationally passed down.
Correct.
So this is their inheritance that they've received. People who don't have 401ks, who don't have a retirement. This is what they're hoping to pass down to their kids. And now it's burned to the ground.
Right.
And like you said, there hasn't been a lane. I'm talking to some people who are connected to production builders, and it looks like many of them don't even want to touch the area because it's so complicated.
Right.
With permitting and government, and so much is at a standstill. We're recording this in the beginning of April. A big news article came out and said only 4 permits have been approved right now for rebuild. So this is going to be a long recovery.
Long.
But you're showing up. We don't know how the story's going to unfold.
Yeah, and it keeps I think the vision keeps growing because thinking through just the simple seed was to build 7 houses for people that can't afford to do, and then it was, which building 7 houses at a time.
And that came from a meeting I was with somebody who really wanted to harness a particular industry to give towards rebuilding Altadena, and they said, look, they're not going to want to give to any Christian church or organization, and so do you know of any other organizations? And I told him about 7 houses, and from his vantage point, he says 7 houses, that sounds kind of small. And I just had this response of, well, the reason why is he wants to, speaking on your behalf, I just said this, and I've told you.
But that's perfect.
It felt like it was a God moment looking back at it.
It's 100% because it's literally shifted.
Yeah, and so I said, oh, well, it's because he wants to help rebuild Altadena 7 houses at a time.
It's true.
Because the reality is you and I have talked to residents in Altadena, and one of the big fears, both there and the Palisades, is why would I want to rebuild if I'm the only house on the block?
Right.
So it's pivoted to
7
baking
houses.
in community.
Yeah.
You're building a neighborhood at a time.
You can sustain life if you have 7 houses together. You could be surrounded by dirt, but if those 7 families have each other, they're going to feel like there's life, And I think that has just taken over my mind, just like nonstop. I just keep going because what I love about it too. The bigger the vision, the less I can do it on my own. 7 houses, I can rip that out, right? My company. I mean, it's like 7 houses, and I have my company AZBuilt, right? Well, I can do that. But the goal and the vision for me would be like you're saying, 7 houses at a time, because I can partner with other builders. Like I can come alongside and bring in everybody in Los Angeles, all these other great builders that want to do beautiful buildings for people that last. Biggest problem with some of these places, like they leak, and then people get this house that they think is nice. We've all seen it in this production. Then the windows are cheap, the cheap windows leak, and it becomes a big mess. And I get it, it's all because it's down to budget. But I want to think outside, creatively, and I want to develop systems that are just kind of a marriage between custom and production. Like what happens when they come together, and see what we can do. I want to think bigger than that. Like we're just going to pepper it with just a bunch of, production homes or whatever. And I know I can't do it all, but I can do something.
Love that.
And this is what it is. This is my something. And wherever it's going to go, I have no idea, but I'm not going to think small. I'm going to continue to think big. And I think God's going to do some crazy stuff. And to go back to your thing, your thing about that. So to be clear, 7 houses, it's not a Christian organization.
No. Yeah.
We just love people.
Yeah.
And I'm a believer. And that's cool, but it's not we're not only helping Christians. That's just not how.
For the love of the city.
Yeah, man. I love the city. I love the people in it. And I just think that it's gonna be powerful, and I want to be part of it.
Well, we'll wrap up the podcast here a little bit unresolved, which is nice because sometimes we want to have the nice little bow to wrap things up, but we're still in the middle of something so great. And I've been saying to you and to so many people, since we're on the backside of the greatest disaster in LA history, that means what's before us is the greatest rebuild in LA history.
Yeah.
And you've also heard me say that when we join God in the work that God wants to do in the world, resources are never an issue.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit of a to be continued.
Yeah.
Would love to have you back on
I'm with it.
the podcast months from now. We have no idea what will unfold. We're going to have a lot of time together in that, but also we're pacing one another in 200-mile races coming up. The
AC.
Wasatch 100 and the AC 100.
Yeah, you're doing AC. Can't wait for that.
Crazy guys.
You're going to give me the middle miles?
Middle miles.
I need that.
Yeah.
I need to just
in the dark.
I need to just set you up just for the
So good.
for that
So
last
good.
25, bro.
All right, so we'll throw some things in the show notes for people to follow with you.
Okay.
Great follow on Instagram. And as you're developing this nonprofit, we'll get all the links there. But God bless you. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for how you've mentored me. I consider you one of my closest friends in the world. You've changed my life, my eternity. So we're just getting started as well.
I love you, bro.
God bless you, dude. Love you.
All right.